down to LA. I have tons of friends down there. They all own cars. So I never went to a car in LA. So I use public transportation. And so whenever they have a question, they email me public transportation. I take it all the time. I take the metro everywhere. And the buses, everybody takes the buses. Let's face it, the LA traffic issue. It's not like here where people are taking it. In LA, it's just always traffic. So if you're in a bus, it's going to take you maybe 15 minutes longer to get there. And so when you're in a bus, you can leave, do whatever you want, you can watch stuff. I took the bus. I don't know if we've ever taken my car. I don't know if there's ever taken a Flix bus. It's called Flix bus. It's from LA, it's usually $30 per hour. And it's 8 hours instead of 6 hours. And if you really think about it, it's 4 hours minimum. To get to the airport, usually it's an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. Once again, I just read, it's great. Like in the late 60s, at least in the Bay Area, somebody needed to come in and just it's better here than somewhere. But it's just so big. Better. Let's face it, I work out San Francisco. You can't really trust it. Oh no, go for it. You have to introduce us to this person. So we get all the love and what's your name? I can't see it right. Kenny. So there's lots of work. 8 PowerPoint. I worked at Salesforce for years, but I just got sick of it. I like it. front-end development, right? I am a freelance contract right now. I work for Salesforce for years. But the people there, honestly, the people are the most wonderful people I've ever worked with. Hands down, some of the best people. But the company is really too fast. We still have it caught up. And there's a lot of the thing is, they don't mind spending their time off the job. So there's always the option. I don't want to do that right now. I love because I do enjoy working there, but it's always the most fun. I took over with people. So I've actually gotten to know all the top. It is amazing. You've never seen it there on before, you can see that at the top. And then the rain days are pretty cool too, because the roads are sometimes a little bit below. So it is pretty nice. You can find somebody that can do this out too. It's really good. They're giving some tours now on Saturday. No, yeah, the tours on Saturday. But those are filled to the end of summer. Yeah. Tour for the public? Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you have to go. I think it's 2 groups of 15 every Saturday. I was trying to get a friend up there. Instead of working with them, I have to go to the yeah, my friends who work there, we'll go up and have coffee on the top. Yeah, it's super cool. You know, in a year or two, it's just something. Keep your eyes out for his lights. Did you hear about the trip?
My boss told me, but I mean, I signed up for it, but I was very passive. Saw the email from the
yeah, you should. Honestly, one of the things I worked in downtown for almost the whole time. I worked part of the remote a lot of the big firms. And it wasn't just your own file. Some of them on 10th floor, 14th floor. There's a couple of the second floor, there's a lot of like open patios. So I know my way around and trying to find my way into a lot of places because I'm doing it for you ever see full flag? It's like a little tree, like a little carrot tree. There's a silver plaque about this building. Yeah, the building they built it on compact sand.
Maybe I have like a similar look.
There's a guy who knows his
Oh, that's you guys do that together.
They have a couple different options. One of the options, but I mean, all the options are like $500, $600, $700 million options. They're gonna, yeah, that's what everybody's shooting everybody else to make sure. Supposedly they're gonna get some sort of inflatable thing that will inflate it so they can put stuff underneath it, drill down to bedrock, put stuff underneath it, slide it in and lower it back down. But they have to do that so gradually because otherwise things will crack and shit and break. You know, starting to start off. It's anything like that is so much fun. But that's, I think that's true. It's so all the but yeah, that building is just, it's a shit show. It's just apartments down there. I think there's a big yeah, and then of course all the people who bought the houses immediately lost all their money. So they're all suing. I'm glad I'm not involved. That was Jake. I got the water for you. Yeah, you'll get 5 in a row on your...
Pretty bad.
You get 5 in a row. Thank you. They were stressing. You got 5 in a row? You got 3 in a row. My brother
You feel like a celebrity wall.
Hello everyone. Welcome, welcome. We will get started shortly, so if you would please take seats or your favorite positions to listen to our speakers. Thank you.
All right, while everyone's settling down, you guys got a card as you registered this morning. It said find someone who. Is there anyone who got 5 in a row? Did somebody get 5 in a row? All right, well, if you find, this card is pretty good, so whoever's doing this, really impressive. Who's? Oh, nice, yeah. I would say that this is pretty good. So if you get 5 in a row, or you fill up the whole board, we have some dandelion chocolate. So a challenge for you. So, but we only have 3. So the first 3 people to do it, we will give you a chance to work on it a little bit and give an answer at the end.
Somebody who speaks 2 or more foreign languages.
Ooh.
I did like
All right.
That's okay?
Yes. Our first winner, Andy. Bingo.
Thank you.
So, this is working. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming.
This is, I never thought that I would actually be hosting a Dribble San Francisco meetup because I used to enjoy going Dribble meetups in San Francisco. Now I'm in front of everyone and then speaking myself, which is quite nerve-wracking. So if I make any mistakes, just please, I'm excused up front. So today we have great speakers lined up. We have Andrew, we have Andy, and we're going to have a surprise guest to talk about. Mainly, since tax season or tax time is very nearby, we thought that as freelancers, we would definitely appreciate some time to understand more about finances, how we can do better as freelancers. You can be freelance designer, developer, doesn't really matter, but being alone, doing business is tough, so that hopefully we can get some cool things out of this today's event. And also please make yourself comfortable. We have some nice food. We also have great people, network, meet each other, because in my experience, best businesses come from people you know or you just meet. So hopefully this becomes a great gathering for everyone. Quick overview of this meetup. We will have 3 parts. One, Andrew is going to talk about how many tips, Andrew, are we going to talk about? 3. 3 tips. Awesome. So he's going to be talking about 3 tips that you could succeed better as a freelancer financially. And then we're going to have Andy. Andy, how many tips are you going to be talking about? 4. Yes, yes, yes. Andy is going to talk about 4 important tips that could make you definitely a bookkeeping wizard. And then we will talk with Sarah. She started her own business and succeeded, so we will hopefully learn from her experience how her journey has been and how we can do better as self-employed people. And just a quick background about myself. I'm a designer, product designer myself. It's my 15th year now. I think in 2017, when I parted ways with the last company I was working with, I wanted to start freelancing, but it was my first time as a permanent resident in the US, so I had no idea where to start, what kind of paperwork I have to do, what happens to my taxes. Oh my God, it was really, really exhausting. And this is actually the background story of Hike as well. I'm happy to tell you afterwards. We are hoping to make legal paperwork and tax-related stuff as simple as possible for freelancers. And yes?
What's your name?
Oh, great question. I told you, like, I'm too excited. I forgot to tell my name. My name is U. It's written as U-G-U-R, but you say it as U. So happy to chat with you after the event. Hopefully we're going to have 30 more minutes to network. All right, so without further ado, Andrew, please come over.
This is not, do I need a microphone?
I think you can all hear me. I think you can just speak there. That's totally fine.
Oh, sorry. It's technology.
You know how to use it.
I don't. You heard my show. I don't know how to use the microphone. All right. Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm Andrew. I am CFO Andrew. If you have, you might have seen me on Twitter. I work basically almost exclusively with freelance knowledge workers. So. Which is primarily, most of my folks are designers, developers, things like that, but anybody that does knowledge work and is a freelancer, that's kind of what I specialize in. We're going to talk about I have a lot of freelancer clients, and a lot of them are really successful, so I'm going to kind of try to tell some stories about what has made them successful. So it's actually one thing. I know I said 3 tips. Be a business. And it's a very interesting concept because being a business means thinking about yourself in a business-like manner. So it actually is a whole lot of different things. This is, kind of the little bit joke, but it's a very important thing for freelancers. When you go freelance, it's so many people think about it as being like, well, I'm just going to do the same thing I did as a W-2 job, but they're going to pay me different. And that's a really good way to not be super successful at freelancing. You got to think of yourself as a business. But like, what does that mean? It's 3 things: be a business, act like a business, profit first. That is a book. I stole the title. It's a really good book. I like it, but we'll talk more what that means. If you've read the Profit First book, it's really, really good. Step 1, be a business. Very, very simple. Actually, physically be a business. If you're going to be a freelance knowledge worker, there's all kinds of different entity types out there, but an LLC with an S-Corp election is the de facto standard for all freelancers. I could give an entire 30-minute lecture on why that's true, but I want to spare you all the details and just take it as read. And if you want to talk more about why that's true, after you can ask me. But there are almost no freelance people that are not LLCs and S corps, at least not that are successful. So why do you do that? It makes you look more professional. I had a client who was going freelance, and they were pitching to big company was, well, they wanted to, whatever, new brand campaign, new big thing they were going to do. He's like, well, I'm going to go pitch this company. I'm going to get this new deal. And he's like, we pitched as himself. And they're like, no, we're a big company. We can't hire an individual. We can only hire a studio. So we made him an LLC, called it his name studio, or some random name that meant nothing, studios. And he repitched the deal and got the client. Because they have no idea that it's big or not. And they're not checking this stuff. And they think that people are looking for the trappings of business more than they actually need the trappings of business. And it was hilarious. Like, it was the same kind of, and they got the job and did just fine, and ended up having to work with more, because he knew lots of other freelancers, so was able to take the big project, split it up amongst a bunch of other people, and they were very successful at getting that job done. But they were able to pitch successfully because they looked professional. And it will save you a ton in taxes. U was saying, okay, tell stories. I could tell this story literally 100 times. I have 140 clients, 100 of them are freelance knowledge workers, and almost all of them came to me with the same answer of, I owe how much in taxes? How do I fix this? It will save you a ton in taxes. Like I said, I don't want to bore everybody with the math of why that works, but professionals manage stuff like that. It can be a pain to set up. Most people don't do this stuff because they think it's really hard. They think it's really hard to maintain. They think it's really hard to set up, and it can be. You have to sign pieces of paper and put them in the mail. It's the most ludicrous thing you've ever heard of, but that's how a lot of this stuff still functions. And especially when you're dealing with freelance tech and design people, wait, I have to put a stamp on this? I'm like, yeah, I know. There's no, but how else do there's got to be I know it shouldn't be, but that's how it is. And so I have to write a physical check and take it someplace. And people are like, I don't even know how would I even find a check? But the long run payoff can be hugely, hugely powerful. So what do you do to be a business? You need an LLC. You need an EIN and an S election. So you need an LLC. This means you're telling the state of California, at least because we're in California. If you're in other states, you tell other states. But you're telling the state what's going on. I need an EIN and an S election, which basically means I'm telling the federal government, the IRS, what's going on. I need a bank account, which means I'm basically telling my vendors what's going on. Go pay this thing over there. And that's the basic steps of do that and you are a business. That's all it takes, which is, starting your own business is very, very difficult, but you also have to take it with a grain of salt, because anyone that says, oh yeah, I started my own business, so you went to LegalZoom and went through a wizard. That's not, that's not, did you produce revenue with your business? Because it's not that high a bar to start your own business, but, so, step 2, act like a business. This is the part where a lot of people fall down. I can go to LegalZoom and click through the little wizard that makes me an LLC, but if I don't act like a business, it doesn't work. It will all tend to fall down. This means payroll. This means having books and accounting. This means permits and licensing and various state things. Different states and different cities have different kinds of rules and things you have to take care of. Don't be the freelancer going over bank statements and receipts at tax time. You all know that person, or you are that person, right? I can't go out, I've got 12 months of bank statements and I'm going through highlighting it so that my accountant can figure out how much I can, that's not how businesses operate. That's how people get surprise tax bills. Businesses don't have surprise tax bills. They have numbers that they know. This is another story. I could tell 100 examples of this. Like I said, a whole bunch of my client base. You think that oh, well, I'm just gonna do the same thing I was doing, but I get paid different. Yeah, the different thing is, you haven't paid any taxes on that money. And even though they gave you all the money up front, you still owe the taxes. And almost all freelancers, the first time out, forget that until April. And then they go, oh crap, I owe how much money? Because now not only am I paying all the tax in one shot, but I'm probably paying more tax than I was paying as a W-2 employee. And it can take years to dig out from that. Mostly, we got to put you on a payment plan, and it takes Then I got to pay ahead, so I spend years trying to pay ahead to stay current, and also paying off the back one, and that's not a good way to save money, to buy a house, to retire, is to constantly spend all of my disposable income paying off tax debt. And businesses, if you act like a business, it can't be unwound. This is the one it is more rare, but I've seen it happen. I had a client, got audited. They had a freelance business, husband and wife. They were had payroll, 401k, whole bit, had some money coming in, but they had too much. IRS came in, audited, and they basically said, hey, this is so much stuff going back and forth between your business and your personal that like this business isn't a business. I'm like, well, what do you mean? They have a bank account, an LLC. Like, no, it's just not a business. Okay, well, what result is that? Oh, well, we're gonna take all your 401k money you put away and deducted. You gotta pull all that back out again. You gotta pay the penalties on that. All the deductions, all wiped out, all gone. You pay tax on 100% of the things. That was about $150,000 tax bill. That is world ending in a lot of cases. It's rare. I don't want to scare you into thinking like, if I'm not super careful that I'm gonna have a world ending thing, but it happens and it's not good and it can be very, very expensive. And they didn't even, they paid $150,000 in tax. That doesn't include the amount of money you spent on the lawyers fighting for 18 months with the auditors, the accountants who also spent 18 months fighting with auditors, appealing, the whole bit. Like if you're gonna be a business, do it right, because they will ding you if you don't. And you know what you don't get paid for as a freelancer? Chasing down 1099s. If you are coming in February and going, I have to call all the people that paid me to get a 1099 so I know how much to put on my taxes, you're doing it wrong. And that's not how this is supposed to operate, because all that kind of work isn't value-adding work. No one's paying you to do that. No one's paying you to go over bank statements, so the more time you spend doing that crap, the less money you're making, the less successful you're being. Books. Books means accounting. It means I have a bank account and I have numbers that I can go produce that say I had produced X amount of revenue, I had Y amount of expenses, which means I have Z amount of profit. It can be super scary, and it is a little bit of a pain in the butt, but it's a lot easier now. It's 2019. This stuff can be automated a whole lot more than you think it can. Again, you get it set up properly, and it's not that hard, but you gotta do it. Payroll. Businesses don't just move money around willy-nilly. They have employees who they pay, like regular people. And you need all these things in the cloud, right? Your shoebox, your spreadsheet sitting on your desktop of your computer, that doesn't help anything. Nobody else people like me, I can't see that, which means I can't help you with it, which means when it's broken, no one's gonna know it, right? So that's not super helpful. Profit first. Businesses exist to create a profit, and a profit is more than just a wage. This sounds really obvious, but it isn't, okay? Because one of the truisms of, if you have employees, you've ever managed people, you know that the truism of having employees is that work expands to fill the time available, always. However much time you've got, that's how much time it will take to get that project done. In a business, the same thing is true, except that its expenses expand to fill available revenue, always. And you'd be amazed how many businesses have, as they get more revenue, somehow those expenses just keep creeping up right along with it. And so this goes back to, like I said, I stole that idea from the book called Profit First, which is you're supposed to go and pay yourself first. Take the money out, put profit aside, make what you were making before, but you should also have other profit. I have a client that does Amazon FBA businesses. And we started doing this. He had launched companies, tripled his revenue. It went from $500,000 of revenue to $1 million, $1.5 million of revenue, and all of a sudden we looked at the numbers and we're like, wait a minute, you made less money with $1.5 million of revenue than you did at $500,000 revenue. How is that possible? Expenses expand to fill the revenue available. And so we started going back and saying, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna pull out the profit, we're gonna pull the taxes out, and you can only pay your bills with whatever's left in the account. Come year end, he had tripled what he was taking home because he just didn't have the money, so he didn't spend it. And it's one of those things where it seems super obvious and like, well, I would never do that, except all of you will because everybody does, because that's how people operate, right? That's how people, as a general rule, are really bad with money. It's not you. If you think you're really bad with money, it's not you. Everyone's bad with money. We're not good at it because we're behaviorally, emotionally driven creatures, and money is a very complicated topic. So if you can force yourself into saving, that will help you go a long, long way in doing that stuff. And taxes are the biggest drag on profit. If you can find any way to save money in taxes, more than fees, I'd rather you go take your savings and put it in a really high-cost mutual fund, which is generally not a good investment, but if you did it in a tax-advantaged way, you'd probably still end up ahead. Because more than fees, more than bad investments, more than anything else, taxes are one of the biggest drags on your savings and your wealth creation, almost bar none. So you got to figure out how to save that stuff. Let me make sure I get my. Yep, okay. You need a 401k. 401k is greater than IRA because, and this, what's the IRA maximum contribution limit? $5,000, $6,000? Here's a secret. If you put $5,000 away every year for the rest of your life, you know how much you're gonna have to retire? Not enough. Okay? 401k, you can put 4 times that away. That's how you start saving more money. HSAs, this is a health savings account, just another way to put money away tax-free, pay for stuff before tax. That's the secret. Everything you pay for in pre-tax dollars means you just paid 30% less for it. Because if I had to go make $1, pay 30% in tax, I only had 70 cents to spend. Or if I spent that $1, I didn't have to pay the tax on it, so I had to make $1 just to have 70 cents to spend. If I spend that $1 before I pay the tax on it, I'm 30% richer. That's a pretty big change. That's a huge factor in increasing your standard of living. You might not have more dollars, but you can have a much higher standard of living because you've got way more purchasing power. And all this stuff is ways that you do that. Put more away with a 401k. Use the HSAs. Use the non-taxable fringes that are available to businesses to help you save money. But like I said, the most important thing is the mental switch that comes from treating yourself like a business. The most successful freelancers that I work with don't think about themselves as wage people. They don't think about like freelance versus W-2 is just a different way to get paid for doing the same work. They think about themselves and what they are as a brand, as a person. And that's extensions, right? You think about, okay, well, I design things like this, and therefore I can make, all kinds of clients that does like this. Guy made an icon set. Just kicks off an extra 30 grand a year, just selling online. And because it's part of the brand, part of the theme of what goes on, right? Events, studios, you start getting, as you get more people want to train with you, you can outsource work to them. You build you start driving more work to you because you know that you're a person that produces, they know that your group is a group that produces really good work. And so you can expand to be getting a little bit of a take from 7 people working for you who all need help. And that's how people operate like a business. That's a business. That's me making myself into a business, not just a person that does work for an hourly wage. You can sell a business. That's the big thing, right? If you have yourself and you just take contract jobs, when you go to retire, you stop taking contract jobs, you're done. You have a studio that produces good work under a brand that people recognize that drives traffic, you can sell that. That's an asset, right? You can sell it to somebody else and retire with an additional lump sum of money. And like I said, expand your business, sell more stuff. It's more than just your time. Businesses have all kinds of different things you can be selling. So yeah, if you want to build an empire, be a freelancer. And if you're going to be a freelancer, be a business. Oh, and so that's what Hike does. We'll talk about Hike a little bit later, I think. But Hike, this is why I work with someone like Hike. This is what CA Andrew does. I'm doing the same stuff that Hike has done for a long, long time, which is trying to get all these tools into one place to make it easy for people. And I'll tell you, now, even just from 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, it is so much easier to be a freelancer now, even than it was 10 years ago. It's unbelievable. We're automating me out of a job, which is totally fine because we'll always find something else to do. But like, it's not nearly as hard as you think it is. So, thank you. Andrew, CFO, at CFO Andrew.
CFO and
CFO Andrew.
are you part of Hype?
I am,
Oh.
I think. Am I? Yeah. So I'm part of Hike, and I'm also, and I also have CFO Andrew. CFO Andrew is the way to contact me. So at CFO Andrew on Twitter, and maybe other places. I don't really know. I'm not so good at social media. I have other people. I am a business, but I have other people that make sure I look like a business, because that's not what I do.
Any questions for Andrew, since he's here, that might be able to answer any questions you may have?
What are some examples of non-taxable fringes?
So the best one is going to be like cell phones. So cell phone. What are some examples of non-taxable fringe benefits? So for me, I was thinking about cell phones. It's one of those things. Cell phones are a great example of the IRS just giving up, right? Because everybody wrote 100% of their cell phone off, and they're like, okay, we can't chase everybody, so we'll just fine. You guys can just, if you pay for a cell phone that's reasonable, we can write the whole thing off as a business expense, and you're very unlikely to get dinged or penalized for that. So auto transport. Another thing I would consider as a kind of a non-taxable fringe is thinking about the things of like when you're in a community like this, and if I am a business, and me meeting with and hanging out with other designers and developers, that's me promoting my brand. So if I'm spending money to travel to that for the Lyft and the whatever, and while I'm out at the bars and restaurants meeting people, when you are your brand ambassador, everything you're doing, everything you are, is to a certain extent promoting that business, which means it might be part of what you need to be writing off as a business owner.
Any other questions for Andrew?
What's the difference between an LLC as an S corp and just an S corp?
An S corp is a tax election only, so there is no legal entity that is called an S corp. So you either make a corporation or you make an LLC. Either of those things can elect S corp status with the IRS.
The couple you mentioned that got screwed,
Mm-hmm.
what did they do wrong?
Commingling.
Huh?
Commingling funds.
What is that?
Too much stuff going back and forth between business and personal, and not enough, too much expenses relative to the amount of income they have in the business. Yeah.
I do have a question, but it's a quick one. Okay.
Sure. Hello. So basically, if I am a freelancer and I work out of my home,
Mm-hmm.
how much of
That's
my
the other
home
question.
can I deduct?
It depends on what kind of freelancer you are and how you're set up.
Full-time freelance designer, even though I'm not right now.
It depends on how you're, it depends on, so all expenses, I'll give you the basic, what I was saying. This is a question we get asked a lot. This is like the number one question I get asked all the time is how do I do this? And the short version is it depends, because the other thing I get asked second or than that is, can you give me a list of things I can deduct? And it is impossible to do that. Why? Because what is deductible is what's called ordinary and necessary for your business, right? So what is ordinary and necessary for you, a designer, might not be what is ordinary and necessary for me as an accountant or for Twitter as a corporation. So you're always making different cases based on your facts and circumstances, which is why nobody can give you a list of things you can deduct. So the short answer to your question is, it depends on how you're set up. There's a couple different ways to do it depending on your structure. Ask me later and I can give you a longer answer.
It's more for them.
It depends. Yeah, it varies based on how, like I said, varies based on how you're set up, and there's, it depends.
Any other questions? We can also, Andrew is going to be around after the presentation, so we can continue there as well. But, well, thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you.
All right, so our next guest is Andy Smiles. She is a small business bookkeeper since 2010.
No, longer than that. For
Longer
10
than
years.
that. For 10
So
years.
however
10
long
years,
that
okay.
ago.
Great. So she will be, wait, let's get your presentation up. She will be telling us about, let's find your, there we go. Here you go.
Hi, everyone. So, like Ooh said, my name is Andy Smiles, and I am a professional bookkeeper. I'm also a small business financial consultant and coach. And I've been doing this for over 10 years now. This year is my over 10-year mark. So I've worked with a lot of different types of self-employed people. I've worked with consultants, designers, personal service providers, retail stores, salons, fitness boutiques, really every type of self-employed person and business structure that you can imagine. I've worked with them. But the one thing that all of these people have in common is that they are all what solopreneurs. So basically, it's them in their business really running the show. And while they may contract out to other people, they are essentially their business, right? And I think many of you can probably relate to what that's like. So today, I'm going to be talking about 4 secrets to organizing your finances to maximize your tax savings. So Andrew went over a lot of strategies in order to sort of like get the tax savings, but now what are the little things you can do in the ways that your business finances are organized in order to really get all of the strategies that Andrew talked about. So first, we're going to talk about keeping your business and personal finances separate. Andrew gave us an amazing example of why this is important, because you don't want to get audited. But there's some other reasons why we want to keep our business and personal finances separate. First of all, it makes your accounting way easier. If you have ever had to go through your bank statements, as Andrew mentioned, and pull out every single business expense with your Trader Joe bill, your Whole Foods bill, your night out at the bar, you know that that's a pain in the ass, and you don't want to do that every single year. So when you have that separation, you know that everything in your separate business account is just for business. You're not going through and doing the whole highlighter thing. You also have less missed deductions. So deductions, as Andrew also mentioned, really directly impact how much you pay in taxes. So when you are going through piles and piles of bank statements the day before taxes are due, you are probably going to be tired, and you are probably just going to be like, whatever, I don't care, I don't want to research this stuff anymore, I'm just going to let this one go. And that's where you're going to start missing deductions, and you can miss a lot of deductions this way. It also saves you money if you hire a bookkeeper. So if you're sitting here thinking, I don't keep my own books, I don't care, well, bookkeepers will charge you more because it's a lot more work. And I can speak personally where I have worked with people who have had mixed use accounts, so they've had their business and their personal accounts mixed, and then the next year have had just business only accounts, and I've billed them 40% less. So that's a lot of money that you're gonna save by just opening a different account, a separate account. So I wanna tell you about one of my clients, Amy, who was really resistant to having a separate account for her business finances. And Amy had not filed her taxes for 3 years. And part of the reason that she didn't file her taxes is because she was so overwhelmed by the idea of going and figuring out what's my business income, what are my business expenses, that she just couldn't deal with it. I mean, she basically really shut down about the money stuff. So Amy and I started working together, and it was like, gotta do this thing, gotta do this thing, gotta do this thing. She finally did the thing, but she didn't do it in the beginning of the year like I'd recommended. So she had about 4 months where she had to go back, pull out the transactions, and enter them into her new bookkeeping system. And after she did all that, she got on a follow-up call with me and told me, tell everybody you know that this is so much easier when you have everything separated. It was her grand revelation. And so I am passing on this information to you, that it isn't just me telling you this, that other business owners, and this happens time and time again, I tell people to do this, they don't want to do it, they finally do it, and they're like, I can't believe it was this easy. I didn't even know it was possible. So how do we get to that magical state of mind? By opening a separate business checking account. And you only use this checking account for business expenses and depositing your business income. So no more getting paid by PayPal and putting that in your personal account. That money goes into your business account, right? No more using your personal credit card. when you don't really have money to buy something. You either buy it out of your business account or you don't buy it because you don't have the money for it, right? So open a separate business saving or checking account. Honestly, if you only do one thing this week for your money, let it be this, because this will set the foundation for a really organized, streamlined financial system. Now, as a bonus, if you're going down to the bank to open your business checking account, open a tax savings account as well. So this is a separate savings account that you just put your tax savings into. This is really, really helpful because, as Andrew mentioned, the money that you pay in taxes, it's not your money, it's the IRS's money. They're just waiting for you to give it to them every quarter. And what I see time and time again is that people get really excited because they have lots of money in their bank account. And they're like, I'm going to buy something awesome with that. And then they forget that they have to pay their taxes. So when you have a place to put that tax money away, it's out of sight, out of mind. And even if your online bank system lets you label it like no trespassing, keep out, right? Remind yourself that this money is not there for you to spend. It's not there for you to use. It's there to avoid these heinous tax bills that Andrew was telling us about. All right. So the second secret is to start using a bookkeeping program. Now, some of you may be like, I have a bookkeeping program, it's a spreadsheet. That is not a bookkeeping program. And while a spreadsheet is totally great to start off with, yes, at least it's something, at least it's not a shoebox full of receipts, it really isn't the most optimal way to track your business finances. So the bookkeeping program that I recommend is QuickBooks Online. And I will make the distinction right now that I'm talking about QuickBooks Online. I'm not talking about QuickBooks Self-Employed, which is a different product. It's very confusing because you are all self-employed. It's called QuickBooks Self-Employed. It's also online, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the actual QuickBooks Online platform. So QuickBooks Online is awesome because it really does make things so much easier. And the main reason for that is because it automates your bookkeeping. So basically what it does is it downloads your information from your bank. So unlike a spreadsheet where you have to sit there and type everything in line by line, which is tiring, this will download your information and then all you do is tell it what category it is, what type of tax deduction it is. So this saves you a ton of time and it saves you so much pain of going over line by line your bank statements. And again, it helps you have less missed deductions because you're not relying on manual entry. So I've been a bookkeeper for over 10 years, and even I make mistakes when I have to manually enter things in because we're not robots, right? We're humans. So you will miss things if you are going and typing line by line. I have seen people miss entire months, like they just legit forgot to type in an entire month of their income and expenses. It happens. And when you have this sort of automation with QuickBooks Online, or really any program that downloads transactions from your bank, you're gonna be less likely to miss that because all of that data is coming down and it's reminding you you have to do something with it. The other thing is you're gonna be more emotionally willing to do it. It makes it easier to deal with your money. We all probably have been in that space where we know we have to deal with our money and we don't want to do it because it's overwhelming. This makes it easier and it has a domino effect in your business because as you become more comfortable with bookkeeping, then you become more comfortable with looking at your reports. Then you become more comfortable with doing your taxes, right? It all filters out, but it starts with at least getting comfortable and being willing to do the tracking side. Okay, so now let's talk about your bookkeeping routine. Ideally, you want to do your bookkeeping once a week, and it should really only take you 30 minutes. If you're using a tool like QuickBooks Online, it will not take that long. I say once a week because if you do it once a week, the buildup of what you have to log and categorize is so minimal that it doesn't feel terrible. If you do it once every 6 months, you are going to hate your bookkeeping. So try to do it as much as possible. all of these digital accounting programs have an app, so you can do it when you're on BART, you can do it when you're in your Lyft. You don't have to do it at home, but try to do something once a week. And also, I recommend to build consistency in your bookkeeping routine. So doing your bookkeeping the same day at the same time really helps to build that habit. And set up a recurring appointment in your calendar, right? Remind yourself, because we want to blow it off, so we are probably going to try to remember a lot of other stuff and not our bookkeeping. And also consider this time non-negotiable. This is not time to do that project that needed to get done yesterday. Your bookkeeping needs to get done. It's an important part of keeping the wheels of your business turning. I know, we focus so much. I have this problem too of focusing on the external work in my business, which is everything I do with my clients. But there is a certain level of internal work that we have to do in our business to keep the business running and to keep ourselves solvent for the external work. Okay, so this is what you're gonna do every week. You are going to categorize your income and expenses. Pretty simple. You're basically going to say, this is what type of income it was, this is what type of expenses it was. You're going to enter in your cash receipts. These are deductions that get lost. People forget about their cash receipts. They find them the day before tax time in an envelope, and they're like, I can't even, and then those expenses we're not writing off. You are going to enter any expenses that you have accidentally paid for with your personal account, because we have a business account now. Again, these are the expenses that get lost. These are the deductions that people are not writing off because they totally forget about it. So you want to stay on top of it and not have that backlog. Then you are going to apply your payments to your open invoices. Another thing I see a lot with invoice-based businesses is they don't do this. They just think, oh, I remember that invoice got paid, and then they're tracking down payments months later. And then you're going to send your unpaid invoice reminders. When you are tracking your income and expenses weekly, you are able to keep up with who has not paid you, which means you are able to send out reminders to those people in a timely fashion, not 6 months later when they're like, dude, that was a long time ago. Monthly, you're going to reconcile your bookkeeping, which basically means that you're going to match what's in your program to your bank statements. This is so super important. In the last 2 weeks, I have had 2 people reach out to me telling me that they think they did their bookkeeping wrong. When I looked into their accounts, nothing was reconciled, which means any error that they made in their bookkeeping, they did not catch. Guess what? Both of these people, somehow, I don't know how, were double counting their income. So if they had not gone through a reconciliation process, they would have over-reported their income. They have to pay taxes on that. Or they have to file an amended tax return. Both of them suck, right? Both of those options are not great. Doing your taxes again, no one wants to do your taxes once. Why do them again? So the reconciling your bookkeeping, I know it sounds boring. It's a super big, scary word. It's not that hard. It really is important because it ensures that whatever you're reporting is accurate. You're going to review your numbers. Right? Look at how much money you're making, how much money you're spending, get to know your finances. You're going to transfer money to your tax savings every month because you're staying on top of your taxes, and you're going to pay yourself monthly or every other month. So I want to tell you about my client, Alex, who is a designer. So before I worked with Alex, his invoicing system was very sad. It was literally put an invoice in one folder, and when it's paid, move it to another folder. And as you can imagine, he forgot to move a lot of invoices from folder to folder. So what ended up happening is when he hired me to kind of like set up his system and all that stuff for him, we were looking at what was the past, right? Where's your system now? And we found so many unpaid invoices that he thought were paid. And not only that, we found invoices that the wrong amount was paid and they were underpaid. We found invoices that were not added up correctly and were underpaid. And to be honest, he was so just like, I can't do this anymore. And some of these invoices were 8, 10, 12 months overdue that he had forgotten about, that he just let them all go. And that's a huge bummer. But that really speaks to why it's important to stay on top of this stuff. Because if you don't, you could literally be losing money. Okay, So the last one is about knowing your numbers. I have to be honest, this is not about taxes at all, but I honestly think that this is one of the most important things that you can do for your business. So you can use your numbers to help you make major decisions in your business. The catch is you have to have numbers to use, which all goes back to why it's so important that you're organized with your income and expense tracking. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of how a few of my clients have and have not been able to use their numbers to make pretty major, I'm talking about change the direction of your business decisions. So first is Mary, who's my client who owns a salon up in Sacramento. So about a month ago, Mary was approached by a developer who wants to partner with her and basically build out her dream salon. And this salon and this new space would have a really significant impact on increasing her revenue. And not only that, it would increase her revenue in terms of rental revenue instead of revenue that she actually has to be behind the chair doing. So this could really change the scope of her business. But of course, there's a higher rent, right? There's a higher cost. So Mary calls me and she's like, can I do this? And I'm like, okay, well, let's look at the numbers. Guess what? Mary did not do her bookkeeping for 2018. So we have no numbers. So she wants to ask me questions like, can I afford to take on this partnership with this person? Can I afford the rent? What would the worst case scenario look like? How can I insulate myself from the worst case scenario? How can I ensure that I'm prepared for this? And I'm like, I can't tell you because I have literally no information to look at, right? And now we're like scrambling to get her bookkeeping done for 2018, so we have something, but she has to sign this contract on April 1st, which means she's in a terrible position of having to make this really big decision in her business in a week, right? That's making any major decision, especially if it requires a lot of financial investment, is super stressful. But then having this really quick timeline, I don't even want to think about how that would feel because it stresses me out just working with her. So this is an example about why doing your bookkeeping and having your finances organized is so important. So now I'm going to tell you a happier example, not the doomsday one. Another client named Ashley, she owns a boutique fitness studio here in San Francisco, and her fitness studio was doing awesome. She was doing great. She's super busy, lots of clients, everything was going well, and then all of a sudden she noticed a huge dip in her revenue. And her revenue kept dropping and dropping and dropping, and she realized it was because of a fitness app that was poaching her customers. And she was really worried because she was like, basically, if her revenue continued to drop, she would not be able to sustain her business. And she's like, what do I do? I have to get out from under this before I'm, starting to have to take out loans and really things were not good. So we came up with 3 potential solutions. Okay, here are 3 things that might work. And then she tried one thing every couple months. And guess what we did? We looked at the numbers. We went and we looked at, where are your income streams coming from? Are they coming from the right places? Are these methods that you're trying working or not? And in some cases, they weren't working. And then we knew it was time to pivot and to stop putting money into these things that weren't working. And then in some cases, they were working, and it took 10 months. But after 10 months, she finally found the one strategy that would work. And that's what she went with. And now she's up again, she's doing great. But these are the reasons. We often think that we're just doing our bookkeeping to make tax time easier, but we're not. Yes, we are tracking for taxes, and we are tracking to make taxes easier and to maximize our tax savings. But we're also tracking for our own information so we can make really informed and intentional decisions in our business. So that's it. Thanks.
We have time for 1 or 2 questions.
Hey, that was great, actually. Years ago, I used to work at Xero, cloud accounting software. I'm sure you guys used it too. But one of the things that I kind of realized is that I know more about taxes than I should ever. And one of the things that I took away is when Okay, so one of the things that maybe you can talk about is maybe if you have other clients like this, that do you recommend them to do quarterly, biannually, annual taxes so that they're not waiting till the end of the year?
Yeah, I think, are you referring to paying your quarterly taxes? Yeah, so the method that I teach, the method that I recommend is to put money into your savings every month for your quarterly taxes. So every month, look at your numbers, calculate your tax savings. It should be, as Andrew mentioned, generally around 30% of your profit, and to put that money away into your tax savings account. And then every quarter, yes, pay your estimated taxes. So this tax savings account is sort of, you can think of it as like a short-term savings account. It's not like the way we typically think of savings accounts where they're like growing over time. This is really just a place to put money, and then you transfer that money back out, and then you pay your taxes every quarter, your quarterly estimated taxes, and that will really help reduce that financial strain at tax time.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
I have one more question. It's real. So I get paid through. I sell tickets for events, and I get paid through PayPal. And at the end of the year, I get like a 1099 or like a form, and it has everything all listed out, and it makes it really easy. But I do wait till the last minute to do it. However, I don't have any surprises or anything along those lines. How could I manage it? Is there? Do you think I should continue even though it's working for me the way that it is, or should I? Is there a better way to manage my yearly, annual? It's really a side business.
You can totally, so PayPal connects to QuickBooks. It will connect to any digital accounting software. So you can still track it like that, because the issue that I'm hearing something that might be difficult is you only know how much you've made at the end of the year. So you're not able to stay on top of it month to month looking to see how much did I make. Yeah. I mean, you probably guesstimate, but you don't have that really clear like profit and loss report. This is how much money I've made. So what I would recommend is, you know, if you're going to use a tool like QuickBooks, to just connect your PayPal account, and it'll do the same thing, because PayPal is essentially an online bank account, so it'll just download the transactions, and you can categorize them, and then you're not having to wait till the end of the year. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much, Andy. So we have now Sarah. And we will talk with her about her journey, starting her business and growing. And we will just a couple of minutes to set this up, or reset this up, and then we will start our chat with her. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like you're not a. Yeah, yeah. You're not gonna do anything. You were everyone. That was like the whole time was like so bad. All right, guys. Sorry about that. What's your name? We'll do the headlines on front page taxes on the I'm like so sorry.
All right. So let's slowly get back to our
And I think I figured out what makes me nervous. This light is definitely, it's hard. Like there's a light
all of us watching you.
I know, it's such a nerve-wracking. I never thought that this would happen. Wow, okay, that's cool. That's a humbling experience, let's say. Well, thank you very much, Sarah, for joining us.
Thank you.
And so how many of you are designers here? I know that, okay, quite a bit. And some developers as well. Any developers? Okay, 2, 3. All right, cool. And any other people freelancing other than?
Photography.
Sorry?
Photographer.
Photography. Okay, cool. Awesome.
Illustrator?
Illustrator. Okay, awesome. So we got quite a bit of designers, some developers, photographers, and illustrators, right? Awesome. So Sarah comes from a bit different background, but I will first let her introduce herself and then learn more about her business because I'm super curious as well. I would love to hear more stories from her. So Sarah, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, U. Also, thank you for inviting me here. Thank you all for coming. You're so wonderful. You're all beautiful and lovely that you're here tonight on a Monday evening. First, I want to give it up to Andrew and Andy. Wow. Great talks about money and stuff. I was getting a little nervous over here. I'm one of those people that gets anxious around money in general, but I would argue that I get anxious around my own money, but like if you give me somebody else's money, I'm fine spending that. Or like managing that. Give me somebody else's money, I'm cool. So actually, I come from a background, I started in corporate when I got out of college, hated it. Started my own business with my husband. It was a web design company called Pixel Fox. It was really dumb, but really fun. We had one client, it was a roofing company. We lost all of our money and shut it down a year later. And then I moved, I'm actually from Minneapolis. So we started there and then moved out to San Francisco. And I actually couldn't get a job when I moved out here. It was really hard for me to find work in general. Tried a bunch of different things, nothing really landed, got a job at a bakery, just kind of bounced around a bit. Ended up getting a job at a design agency called Mule. Worked with Mike Montero and Erica Hall. I see some heads nodding a little bit, yeah. Worked with them for a little while and then realized that my real calling was more toward podcasting. So I started a podcast network with me and a few other guys, and now we started that in 2015. Quit my job at Mule, did that full time, and did that for 3 years. So it was a pretty wild ride, but our podcast network is all around helping designers and developers level up in their careers. Some of our shows are Design Details and Developer Tea. That's just a few of them. The network is called Spec FM, and it's growing really slowly but really surely. I'm actually really impressed with it. I thought it was going to fail like my last thing, but it just keeps growing slowly. So
that's great. I mean, you start something knowing that it might actually fail, but you do it despite that fact and despite that fear. And it's amazing to see it growing and coming to a level where you can now, you're doing this for full time, right?
Yeah, I did it full time for 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. Yep.
Got it.
And then I got nervous because after 3 years of doing the same thing over and over, you kind of feel like you've stalled out a little bit and you're not sure if you're competitive in the job market anymore. So I ended up getting a jobby job, as Andrew calls it. I keep pointing at Andrew because he does a show with us. He didn't talk about it, but he does a show called Orthogonal with us.
What's it called?
It's called Orthogonal. It's a terrible name for a podcast.
I'm horrible at marketing.
So actually, Andrew and his co-host Brett Kelly talk about business, finance, marketing, and running small businesses in general.
Awesome. I didn't know about that. Yeah. Awesome. Should definitely check that one out.
Yeah.
So you started Spec FM 3 years ago.
Yes.
And
actually, it's been more than 3 years.
More than 3 years. So tell us more about, like, you start with some more uncertainty. You more or less have an idea, right? It's just out of thin air. you have some idea that you want to do a podcast network. Did you have from the day one have an idea about how to make money out of it?
No. We when we started it, it was one podcast. It was Design Details, and the reason we started it was so we're from the Midwest originally, and what we wanted to do with it was give people that were also in the Midwest access to all the amazing designers that are in the Bay Area. We realized once we got out here that everyone is so open and welcoming and willing to share information, insider information, so willingly, but it's not afforded to anyone who's outside of here. So what we wanted to do was have conversations with designers in this area in hopes to spread that to other places. So that's what it started from. And then we went to a couple of events, and people found out that it was a show and asked if they could sponsor us, which is how we ended up getting our first a little bit of cash. We did not set up at all expecting to make money off of it. We set up to do one podcast, and then that grew into 2, it grew into 3 and 4, and now we have 11. So
awesome. And so tell us more about the first ever client or someone who wanted to sponsor. Like, how was that? Where did they find you? And then how was that conversation? How did you know how to work with them?
Yeah, we didn't. We went to an event and Hover was there, and Hover, like somebody on the marketing team at Hover just happened to be at this event we were at, heard that we were running the show, listened to one of the episodes, and said, hey, do you want money for this thing? And we said yes, and then walked away and immediately started going like, oh, how the heck do we even price this thing? What do we charge for this? What are we expecting to make money? Should we expect to make money? How does this change the brand? How does this change our messaging? Like all of that got put into play with this whole side project hustle we had going on. But yeah, it was definitely something we weren't expecting to have happen now.
Awesome. So I'm sure people here can relate as well. How did you learn how to price it, or what was the? You said that you didn't have much idea at the beginning, but how did that go from there? What was your process of learning how to charge for sponsorship for podcasts?
Yeah, I think everybody deals with pricing issues. I don't know. Yeah, I see some heads nodding. Pricing sucks. Especially when you're starting out, you never really know how much to price, except for like what do you need to price to survive. That's like where we started with, was our baseline, and then from there it was more a conversation for us specifically, is more a conversation around how much are we comfortable spending our time doing this and and taking money for it. So it was a lot of pricing our time too, so figuring out what we wanted to be worth to do the show, if we had sponsors that wanted to continue. But really we just started low and then worked our way up. And we had to figure out, do we want to do, cost per click? Do we want to do cost per million? Which is such a pain in the butt. Just do flat rate. Don't deal with any of that. Ugh. It's such a nightmare. So we just ended up going with like a flat rate that we were all comfortable with. And equally divided amongst ourselves. So it's just the hosts and the producers that we had set up at the time. So it was, okay, what's the cut for these people, and do we want to go into this very heavily, and how do we want to go into it? And so we started low. I think we started at like $300 per episode to sponsor. And then slowly worked our way up from there. And I think we actually made a bigger jump when we had some of the bigger names sponsoring us. I think Dropbox was one of the bigger ones, and we really tested our limits there, where we were like, $1,000 per episode? But even that was kind of like oh my God, what's gonna happen when we ask them for this money? And luckily they didn't turn us down, so we kind of stopped there because we were feeling really good about it. But
That's cool. And I think pricing is one thing, and another thing I'm sure that many freelancers or self-employed people can relate. How did you find more and more people who would like to sponsor your shows or the shows on your network? Can you tell us a bit more about finding clients, finding new work, or finding more sponsors?
Yeah. that was a lot of trial and error too. Most of it was, okay, events seem to work. Let's try going to events and talking to more people and letting people know we're looking for sponsors. That seemed to do okay every once in a while. But I think the thing that really helped was we just made a list. Like all of our shows, that's what I even do to this day if I start a new show. It's like make a list of all the companies that you want to have as a sponsor, that you admire. And then we'll just reach out and say like, hey, heads up, we have this show, they're looking for sponsors. If you're interested, let us know, we've got some spots available.
That's cool. So how about, I mean, Andrew talked a bit about how to structure the business, how to be on top of your finances and so on. When was the breaking point for you that you said, okay, now I actually have to have things in a way that actually makes sense? Maybe I have to incorporate, or maybe I have to use a professional bookkeeping tool, or maybe I have to find someone who can help my finances. When did that happen? How did that evolve?
I think it was when we had a sponsor that wanted to do recurring.
And how long into the business?
I think it was a month in. So it was, we were pretty young.
Rather sooner.
Yeah, yep. And then we luckily knew somebody who knew a guy that was looking for clients. So we immediately contacted Andrew to talk about, oh my God, what do we do? What's taxes? How do we make this happen? How do I not fail another business and drive it into the ground because I just don't have time, I think was my problem. Like none of us had the time to think about taxes or bookkeeping. We were just so focused on like making the business what it was. So for a lot of us it was, what are we willing to spend to make sure we can focus on the thing that actually gets us money? And that's when we had the conversation with Andrew. Andrew's our accountant.
Awesome.
And his wife is our bookkeeper. She's lovely.
That's amazing. Yeah, we love Joy too.
Yeah.
So actually this is interesting, something you're telling. I think many of us can relate to that as well. I mean, it's not that we really like paperwork, we really like dealing with taxes or bookkeeping. It is just something on our way that likely either concerns us or maybe creates friction while we're already trying to find clients, trying to grow our business and so on. And did that help, like working with professionals that were you actually able to, or have you felt the impact of this working with professionals that have helped you to grow your business or made your life easier there?
Yes, it is definitely worth trading money for time. What I would advise anybody, if you have the affordance, find people who are experts at things you suck at and pay them to do it for you. It makes your life so much easier. I am pretty sure our business would not be what it is today if we hadn't had that initial conversation with Andrew. And I will admit that the first time I had that conversation, I almost had a conniption because I had no idea what he was talking about. So that was great. But basically, the trade-off was I could do this myself and spend a lot of time and energy and just like getting really anxious trying to figure out how to do this myself, or I could pay somebody a little bit of money and they could just take care of all of it for me. What do you want to do?
I see. I think definitely true. I also feel in a similar way. If one can afford, it usually pays off. But
that being said, that means you have to work extra hard to make sure you've got money coming in. So the trade-off there was like, yes, I'm paying for this service, but it also means that I have to get money.
And looking back, when do you think would be a good timing for a self-employed person to think about working with professionals?
As soon as you can. The sooner the better. It didn't take us very long to get through our financials, but definitely when we were kicking off with Andrew and Joy, we had to go through we had the spreadsheet. Yeah. We had a spreadsheet of all of our expenses, and that's what we used. So we had to spend a good month setting everything up. But if you can split up your, like, I think Andrew says this all the time, but he's like, if you can just get a separate account and just have your business and your personal separated, even that is easier when it comes time to like hiring somebody to help you out with that, than trying to do it all your own or trying to blend your personal and your business expenses. That was the one thing that took a lot of setup time, and I was kicking myself, telling myself, okay, next time I'm definitely splitting up my business accounts.
That definitely helps.
Yeah.
I know from personal experience as well. You don't want to deal with one account where your personal and business income is together. Did you also go through that S Corp? Because I know Andrew is big on S corporations. Did you also go through that?
Yes.
Okay. Was it early on, or was it more or less you eased into it?
It was early on.
Early on,
Yeah.
I see. And like, how was the process like? I know that it's a lot of paperwork, but do you remember your feelings when Andrew told you that, oh, okay, I think you should do an S corporations? What was your initial reaction?
At first I thought we were way too small to do that because it was just me and one other person that would need to do it. And to me, I'd never done that before. I'd always operated just as an individual. And so I thought it was a little bit overkill at first. But then that first tax season rolled around and it was super convenient to just have all of that in its own thing. The one thing that is tricky though is definitely figuring out, what non-fringe, non-taxable fringe stuff you've got set up. That's the tricky part of that whole process. But the actual setup wasn't bad. I think the hardest thing was figuring out what name we wanted to be.
Yeah, naming is always the hardest. But Spec FM is, I think, a great name.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So lots of self-employed people, lots of freelancers here, right? Anything that you could share from your learnings, good or bad, with them that could actually that could make them maybe better at what they're doing now financially as a business, from your learnings? What can you share with them?
Oh boy.
Like, do you have something that you knew, oh damn, if I did this a bit earlier, or if I knew this a bit sooner, is there something that you can share with them that could make their life much better in long term?
I think yeah, definitely the setting up the different bank accounts is like a lifesaver, but also just like keep an eye on how much money you have in the bank account. I've done it a couple times where we've gone negative only because I wasn't paying attention, and it was like, whoa, okay, how do we get back on top here? It wasn't that bad. We survived. We came back.
Awesome. Well, this is great. I'm curious if you guys have any questions for Sarah as well. I don't know, like, it is definitely a business from start to end. Like, it doesn't matter if it's freelancing or if it is podcasting or if it's photography or iconography. It is definitely a let's say, complicated at the beginning when you don't know what kind of things you have to do. But as you move forward, we more or less face similar challenges, similar question marks, and so on. As you have been through this and built a successful business, if you guys have any questions for Sarah, maybe feel free to ask her.
Hi, Andy.
Yes.
So you mentioned about like at the beginning, like you didn't want to like kind of you didn't plan out your first business in an event. You like accidentally someone want to sponsor you. That's like an opportunity. Just curious, like it's because that time your like product really young, right? Like you mentioned about 1 year, like 1 month.
Mm-hmm.
Like so, do you think what like attracted with that person is like you already have like a potential solid like user audience, or because your content is really special? And so it's my like number one question, because it's really like organic beginning. And the second question is, now your like business is already like really legit, really solid. Now, do you have like any strategy to plan out this year, next year business? Do you have any business goals? How do you like plan it out?
So I think the question is the first customer that she had, like what was the reason and how come that happened? Maybe because of the brand, or maybe because of the quality, how they found you. And then the second question is, what kind of plans or goals do you have for your business this year?
Yeah, that's great. So the first person we had that was interested in working with us, and this is both for, you know, when I had the failing business and with the sponsorship, I think just meeting people, going out into the community that you're trying to get connected with, and making personal connections was the only way that we were able to get clients in the design agency that I started, and then also with podcasting. It's all human-to-human connection and just being really honest. There's, I don't know if you listen to blues at all, but there's this amazing musician called Mavis Staples, and she always talks about if you sing from the heart, you reach the heart. And so anytime I'm at an event or trying to like talk about what we're doing with the podcast, it's if I speak from the heart, it'll reach their heart too. And so not trying to like sell people what we're doing or numbers or, you know, discounts or anything like that, but trying to get on the same page with them, I think has been really successful for us, at least in making connections with humans that then want to like spread a message on our platform. Yeah, and then as far as like goals for this year, we've had to dial back a little bit. We were really aggressive the last 2 years in terms of what we wanted to do with the network, but this year we've dialed back a little bit to now the real goal is to grow the network. And so we've got 2 shows that we just started on the network right now. We'll probably add another one at the end of the year. And that in itself will grow revenue too, because then it's more options for more people to come in and support us. But aside from that, that's all we've got really this year. It's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of slow this time around.
Awesome. Any other questions for Sarah? Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you sharing. This was amazing.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, we thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you very much, Andy. Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you very much for coming, guys. We have food, we have drinks, we have great people. So, yes.
You should tell us about hype. What is hype?
You might already have guessed. I told you about my background freelancing. We are hoping to build a platform where we could make life easy for freelancers to start and run their businesses. And initial value proposition we start with is just we help freelancers save on taxes. And that is the reason how we are relevant and wanted to work with great people. And if you have any questions, we are here. Reach out to us. Also, I believe you have our email address that we sent you many emails. So feel free, and thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I can barely get on the stage.